You're listening to the Real Estate Runway podcast, powered by Quattro Capital, where we are all about alternative business and investment strategies to help you amplify life and maximize wealth. Here's your host, the recovering engineer turned multifamily investor, Chad Sutton.
Friends, do I have an interesting episode today? So you've heard my friend David Zapata come on in an earlier episode and talk about the infinite banking concept. You are going to hear, if you haven't already, Harper Jones come on and talk about the infinite banking concept. This individual, Clay Hepler, actually has a very unique spin on the family office. So a piece of that is showing you how to use cash value life insurance to give your dollar two jobs and be able to leverage your policy while it continues to grow to buy other assets. But imagine, as you become wealthy, as you create wealth, you generate problems, you generate tax problems, legal problems, right? Asset protection problems. The list goes on. What if you had a one-stop shop where you could gain access to all of the best in-class professionals for each of these scenarios and really build your team? What if you were part of a family office of sorts? What's a family office? We're about to find out. See you there. All right. Welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast, family. I'm your host, Chad Sutton, as always, and I'm joined today with Mr. Clay Hepler. Clay, not only is he a real estate investor purchasing 13 multifamily properties in the last 13 months, but more importantly, he's a chief wealth strategist and CEO of the Creative Capitalist, as well as a podcast host. What does he do? Why is he on the show? He empowers entrepreneurs, executives, and real estate investors to create, protect, and multiply their cash flow. How does he do this? He's got a system that positions your money in a form of a savings account that actually earns uninterrupted compound interest while simultaneously leveraging it into assets that will multiply it. You've heard us talk about the infinite banking concept. This is a little different flavor. We're not going to operate under the IBC concept today. It may play in a little bit. In other words, you can make your money work in two places and accelerate your path to financial freedom and abundance. All right, Clay, welcome to the show. How's it going today, brother?
Man, it's great to be on here. I'm really excited to jam with you today.
The first question I've got to ask before I ask you to tell me about yourself, you mentioned a pretty sweet partnership that you made that I'd love to hear about, how that came about for the listeners here before we get into your background.
Oh, yeah, sure. So my background is actually in luxury chocolate. So, long story short, I dropped out of college. I was working for the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires. I wanted to be, be an ambassador. That was my dream. And I joined my family's business and ended up doing really well in sales and marketing. And we ended up having a partnership with Jeffrey Zakarian and going on QVC. And wow. Jeffrey Zakarian, for those who don't know who he is, he's one of the most well-known celebrity chefs in America. He's an Iron Chef as well as a chef on Chopped, which is like a super famous show, and people go on it and like chefs go on it and like compete against each other to in time, competitions to make great dishes. And it's a really great show. And he's one of the celebrity chefs. So we had a partnership with him and continue to have one today on QVC. So that was a really interesting experience.
That's pretty cool. If you're not careful, you're going to be on Shark Tank before long with Lori. So
yeah, right. Exactly.
Very good stuff. Well, without further ado, Clay, tell me who you are and how you came into this whole world of cash flow banking and capital leverage strategy. Who is Clay Hepler?
Yeah. So I think I mentioned that a little bit earlier. My career path was fundamentally conventional. Like I went to college, wanted to work for the embassy, U.S. Embassy, wanted to be in the State Department. That's what I wanted to do. And frankly, I went down and did it. I basically what I did was I was stamping passports and working with expats in Buenos Aires in Argentina, which is South America. And, we help like micro entrepreneurs, expats build businesses in Argentina, which is like pretty interesting. But when I got really into it, it wasn't what I expected it. And I was doing it for like, 9-10 months. And I don't know if anyone's had a government job, but it was pretty much what you could expect from a government job, just like in a different country and in a different language. Spoke a lot of Spanish. So I actually dropped out of that, dropped out of college because it was still during my tenure at college. And I joined my family business. I mentioned this, and I scaled the business 2 to 42 states in 18 months. And that's through cold calling, sales and marketing campaigns, basically building a presence. And these were with primarily small specialty shops. So you can think of like a Whole Foods and in like a very specialty shop in like very high-end neighborhoods, very bougie, like $36, $37 a pound for chocolate. And we sold toffee. And so, we'd have relationships with like the Omni William Penn in the Omni hotel chain. And during that time period, I actually built a relationship with a business owner in a very well-known city. And this guy was worth like $120 million. I mean, he was incredibly successful, and he did it all by himself, like with no outside capital. He was a real estate guy. He was a business owner. He owned a lot of vertical businesses, like complementary businesses. And he took a liking to me, and I built a relatively formal relationship with him. And along the way, he was just told me just by conversation that he did things differently than the people that I saw how they did it. And it was really interesting, Chad, because he talked about, he had a team of advisors. He paid people absurd amounts of money to make sure that, when you're worth $120 million, if there's an issue between your attorney and your accountant, there's a lot of zeros behind that, right? I mean, it becomes a significant
absolutely
expense. And so, I learned about a family office. Like, what does a family office look like? And this guy was worth $120 million. You would say, oh, that's a lot of money. But like, they're the big family office, multiple billions of dollars family offices. This guy was at the most basic level, but I saw what it looked like. And, he was one of the first people to tell me, hey, Clay, like, you should buy businesses, buy real estate in particular. And I read all the books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and all that stuff after that. But I learned about specific insurance policies like private placement life insurance and, captive insurance companies that, very wealthy people can literally create companies or like have banks that finance life insurance at a loan rate. And basically you got to have $1 million or something a year in terms of loan. The bank will loan you money to set up a life insurance policy, and then you have to pay them back interest. I mean, we're not taught this stuff. And so I learned all about this and about taxes, and I'm not an accountant or an attorney. I'm just very interested in this stuff and how it applies to my family. So I started buying real estate, and, here we kind of are today with me taking a lot of the stuff that I learned. And there are other people now in the mainstream media that, talk about some of the stuff that I learned in a different context, this like cash flow banking or infinite banking. And that's a lot of times these, like Nelson Nash was one of the guys that really made it super popular and had a really strong grasp on using life insurance as a sort of way to put their money in and get tax-free growth, which is what I learned from my mentor.
So all I can say is, wow, Clay. I mean, you kind of by chance, right, met someone pretty awesome who not only, gave you a lot of business acumen that many people, will never be aware of just because of the sheer fact that it's not told, it's not out there. You mentioned, a version of this that is out there by Nelson Nash, the becoming your own banker, infinite banking concept. It's kind of been branded that way. This is a single vector of how life insurance can be used. So through all that, you became an entrepreneur. You've bought real estate. You've scaled a business from 2 to 42 states. I mean, you've got the acumen there. And now you've set out to, and created a company that is actually helping individuals. I'm assuming individuals with capital that needs to be placed, right? To start to leverage these, these life insurance policies to multiply their wealth. So let's kind of move into the meat of this a little bit, right?
Yeah, sure.
Tell me about your company a little bit and tell me about these strategies and how it benefits our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. So, basically the strategy itself is nothing more than a specifically designed life insurance policy that gives you, early cash value and a lot of liquidity. And why this is really appealing to particularly real estate investors or high producers or entrepreneurs is that, you're putting your money in savings now, it's getting 0.01%. And this is a way for you to get 4 to 6%, compounded growth, tax-free growth on your earnings, then basically what you put in your savings. So, the function of this is you put your money in this specifically designed life insurance policy instead of the bank, and you get your growth there. And then whenever you have an opportunity, it serves as an opportunity fund or a large capital purchase like a car, or even you can use it to fund vacations. Then you take a loan out while your money is still working for you. So essentially your money works for you in two places. And it's an incredibly efficient strategy for all of your dollars that come into your own personal economy. And where it really made sense to me, Chad, was then, every single day we have wealth transfers that come out of our life, right? And I actually learned about this primarily through my mentor. We when we pay taxes, when we buy things like a car, that money that we use, we pay to another bank. That money's gone forever.
Right.
Basically the function of this specifically designed life insurance policy is to capture the most amount of cash flow in your own personal economy that can be redeployed into purchasing assets, into purchasing, cars or other large capital purchases that normally would have been financed. And basically what you do is you flow your money through this system so that money that would have been used for cash to pay for a specific thing, it is earning the interest over the duration of your life in a compound manner that is uninterrupted.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and so really what you've got here, for those who recall the episodes we've done on this in the past and in a similar strategy, you really have what you can almost look at as this really awesome savings account that, oh, by the way, it has a death benefit too, but it's something you put your money into. You have a certain amount of cash value every year. Now, I assume it's not 1-to-1 for a little while. It's a little bit of a cash drag is what they call it until it finally fully capitalizes. But that really doesn't matter because you're not just going to let that money sit there, right? You could, and if that's the case, that's how you would look at it. You're really going to get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I've got opportunity X here. Maybe I need to buy inventory for my business. Maybe I see a real estate opportunity. Maybe I want to go to Disneyland, whatever it is you want to do. I don't really recommend using it for the latter, but I guess you can, pull out that capital, you take a loan against it, you pay interest to the insurance company, and your money, it's almost like it was never touched. It just continues to grow at that same rate, right? So you get the benefit of having every dollar having two jobs. Now that dollar's over there working in whatever investment you decided to put it in, and then, the policy's still growing. So on the surface, it sounds like it's very similar to, an infinite banking concept, but I hear there's more. What is different about what you provide and what, what strategies that you can tell us about, that will help the listeners?
Yeah. So, fundamentally the structure of it is like the infinite banking policy. The difference is in the context of my firm, people that are pure infinite banking practitioners, this is their main thing. And frankly, there's a lot of great people out there that do this really, really well. And they stick to the teaching of Nelson Nash, who was, for those who don't know, an incredibly talented life insurance salesman and the person that really brought the infinite banking concept to the mainstream with his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. The function that is different in the context of the Creative Capitalist, which is my company, and my podcast, is that we are looking to put together a family office type structure that was very similar to these family office structure that I learned of via my mentor, so that this is a all-in-one sort of program. Now, again, as we touched on here, Chad, in our conversation, this is a fledgling business. So the services that we have currently are exclusive around setting up these specifically designed systems. But as we grow larger and larger, it's going to be more of an all-encompassing, comprehensive financial service company that brings accountants, attorneys, advisors, syndicators, and we're going to do this all legally, but the vision for the company is to really give people opportunities that are interested in getting involved in real estate, maybe more passively, getting involved in other asset classes passively, and in creating a financial plan around that. And the core part of this is this specifically designed life insurance policy. That's
the core. That's the core, right? And so what Clay's saying here is this is the tool. This is the vehicle, if you will, right? Now, this is very interesting. So let me back up 1 second. You used the term family office. You know, I wanted everyone on this podcast has heard that term. I don't know if everyone knows what it means. Just do me a favor and describe what a family office actually is, and then let's go back into the meat of this.
Yeah, right. So a family office is basically a structure that is that very high net worth families, and let's just say I would say ultra high net worth, and ultra high net worth is above $50 million. And these families have teams of people that are on their side, accountants, attorneys, advisors, and they're pitched opportunities. And that's why I was talking a little bit about my vision for my company, that they're pitched opportunities through private placements that are, great real estate opportunities or other asset classes. And they have access to stuff that we just don't have access to. And there are tons of I'm not an accountant, let me just say this, but opportunities with Delaware statutory trusts. And if you want to ask about those, or go talk to your accountant or, tax attorney about it. But they have, specific team members that are on their payroll that allow them to minimize and mitigate taxes and issues of other investments in their life, making sure that they're compliant. They have a legal team. Everything is under one roof so that they can be most efficient and effective with all of the opportunities and financial, intellectual, and relational in their life.
Very good. So basically what you're saying is, if you have $50 million or more, whatever that number is, I mean, to your point, a lot of these are billion-dollar operations, right? Multi-billion-dollar. Yeah, you hire a team to help you look out for the complexity of your investments and your interests and where money needs to be and what your tax bill is and who's suing you and all that kind of sort of stuff, right? So there's umpteen things. One person can't possibly do that when you're making decisions at that level. So I think what you're trying to put together here, which is really awesome, is not only can you educate an individual who has, some capital. I'm not talking $50 million, right? I'm talking maybe $50,000 or something like that, and up from there, I'm sure, on how to start one of these policies where you can get the double benefit of this banking system or having your money work in two ways at one time, right? But then you're creating an ecosystem of the opportunities where this can go, right? And maybe even the professionals to help guide through the investment. Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct. And so what I see is one of the biggest problems in this industry in particular. And when I say this industry, I mean asset protection, financial multiplication, tax advising, and just anything related to finances and asset protection, is that when we make a decision, a lot of times our decisions related to who we partnership and who we work with is relationship based. Okay. And so what that means is if I, say, Chad, you and I are really good friends, and, I ask you, I said, hey, Chad, you're investing in real estate. You're doing this, syndication. Oh, we are good friends, but we're doing this.
What if we?
Yeah, right. You're looking at me. I'm sorry. But and I say, hey, who do you know that could help me with X? Okay, and you tell me, hey, I had this referral from my other buddy or my other friend that said that this attorney was really good, right? But your job is not to go out and find the best attorneys or go out and find the best accountants. A lot of times what we do is we settle for people that we know relationally, and we don't settle. And this is not even a fault of our own, but it's not our job to find the most high-powered professionals, the best people that can be on our team. and when we're talking about financial services, the difference, the nuance between someone who's really, really good and someone who's good is like, it's not even perceptible unless you're really in that industry. And so my goal is to take this sort of normally this relational network effect of people that are, your accountants and your attorneys, right? And expose people to those people that are just the best in America, right? In a way that they know that my job is to go out and find and create this network of people versus like, hey, my uncle has this accountant that he's like I remember when I got my first accountant, Chad, my first accountant that I had was the most aggressive guy I knew, right? Because like, why tip the government? Aggressive. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best accountant for me. But like, I don't know if he's the best accountant because my job is not to find, at that point, my job is not to find people who are incredibly good. My goal with this business is, of course, the cash flow banking and this life insurance strategy is a core part of this business, but this is a value proposition that is much larger than that. This is a financial team that has been vetted to be the best in the country. So instead of the uncle effect, I'll call it, right? Of like, go down and find your attorney or your like insurance guy or, your auto insurance person or your accountant. It's like, no, the job of this firm in partnership with this firm is to give you access to the best accountants and attorneys at the best price for you in a way that fits with your investor DNA as a real estate person, as an entrepreneur. And that's what my vision for the company is.
That's powerful. I can just mic drop that right there because that is not available today, right? You have to actually, you're kind of on your own until you get to a certain level today. And it just is what it is, right? That's life. Every one of us who is an entrepreneur or real estate investor, or even just a, high income earner, right? You grow out of teams. I mean, you work with who you can find, and then you figure out, well, they can't really help me anymore. You got to go find somebody else. What if you had access to a network where this was already vetted for you, and you could say, okay, well, here's where you are, here's what you're doing. These are the people I recommend you talk to, and maybe it's part of the service. So that brings me to the next question, and then we'll get to some fun, lightning round questions here. But what does it look like for a client of your company? So let's say that they come in, they design the policy. So let's walk through that process. And then when this thing is created, this I'm going to say family office, right, that is part of the service, how would you envision that working for a client?
That's a great question. So the way that we're structuring it now is we're going through the interviewing process, and that's really important. So what it would look like is someone is starting to structure these policies, and again, there's a lot of legal compliance around this, Chad. So we have to be incredibly discerning about the transition between, okay, the client of the company itself and then the client of all of this network of high powered advisors, accountants, and attorneys. So it would look like them coming into the Creative Capitalist network, and then them getting specific access to basically a financial scorecard of what they need to do to be protected legally, and what they need to be, have the most efficient tax accountant, what they need to do to have all their insurance under one roof that's going to give them the best bang for their buck, and advisors, and as well as opportunities that are more passive opportunities. But again, so someone comes into this, right, and they're going to say, yeah, I have like a really great accountant, and the goal of this is not to like bring someone into the community and say, if you don't have a good accountant, what do you know about this is my right? The goal is to have a community that can facilitate an open conversation about what's the best thing for you and your family, and not to say that this is the best accountant, but hey, maybe you should get another look on your taxes, or maybe you should get a look on your legal structure, or maybe we should talk about your trust. Right? Like maybe we should look at how your trust is structured. Again, I'm not a estate planning attorney or anything like that, but these are all questions that we want to talk about, especially for entrepreneurs. Sam, Sam Walton, when he started Walmart, he basically started his estate planning so early that he, prevented his posterity from billions of dollars of estate taxes because he knew that he was going to be successful. What if you had access to that at a fraction of the cost, and it would allow your family to pass millions and millions of dollars tax-free to your heirs, all while enjoying your life along the way? That's my vision.
That's amazing. I mean, and what you're doing, this is a wonderful time for this. Is, folks, we live in a time of information, and we live in a time where the general public, thank the Lord, because we're not even going to get started on what monetary policy is doing to people's wealth right now, right? But that's a whole nother discussion.
Invest in real estate.
Right. So the general public is starting to take an interest in their financial well-being, right? And what Clay is creating here is an opportunity to have access to what previously only the wealthy really could afford or had access to, right? Syndicators like me have kind of already done that for certain investment types, right? And if you come across a private placement offering, there was a time where this wasn't even legal. You could not make a private offering unless it was registered with the SEC as a stock market offering or something like that. So, this process is happening. And now we're finding ways, such as with Clay and his team here, of how you can have access to the advice and the strategy. And I mean, this, wealth is not just investing in real estate or buying crypto low and selling high. Like, you have to understand the tax implications, the legal implications. What happens when you pass your newly created wealth on to an heir? If you don't do that properly, the government will take a very fair share out, or a very big bite out of it. I won't say fair share, right? And so that's just a couple of the things that if you don't know what you don't know, you're going to get bit.
Yeah, and another thing. So I'm very close with a family here in Pittsburgh that, has been investing in real estate in the core areas. Their net worth is probably like, I don't know, $50 to $80 million, right? And
well, they're a small family office,
right? Right, exactly. But here's the thing: their biggest concern is how their family is going to handle it. So, I'm getting, again, this is like real-time learning, right? Like, I'm getting all these ideas about, okay, so these are people that have been mentors to me as well. And like, they're struggling with how to put together a plan that makes sure that their family, when they inherit their money, the one son who is like super greedy, like, doesn't go and take all the money, right? And they've built this business from scratch, and they're so concerned that their kids are just going to like ruin it all. And like, that's a big part of stress in your later years. So we tend in the financial planning world to think about just the beginning year, like how to build wealth, right? Okay. So like, let's talk about how to build wealth, how to do it in a way that's sustainable, that you enjoy your life, how to maintain wealth, how to do that in a way that's not stressful, how to maintain it, and then how to pass it on. Like, the best families have passed it on. And that's like a huge thing too. And so that's my vision for the business, that it kind of, it's the narrative arc of the wealth building journey and helping someone along that whole way.
Wow. I think that is a perfect time to transition to the final questions here. But that is, I think it's a huge value. And I think that anyone who's listening to this right now is probably going to reach out and figure out how they can get access to this. So before we do that, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I have a website, creative-capitalist. My email is clay@creative-capitalist.com. And, you can text the number 412-552-3029 and text or call that number, and it'll be a good number to reach me.
Very good. And as usual, those will all be in the show notes. So no worries if you're driving down the road. Okay. Time for our Quattro lightning round here. Clay, tell me, what is your superpower as it relates to your business?
Yeah, I think my superpower is an obsession with understanding all of these like little nuances when it comes to holistic financial health. Like, I have a really good buddy that lives in Puerto Rico, and I always make fun of him because if those who don't know, like, you don't have to pay capital gains taxes when you live in Puerto Rico. So like the guy moved to Puerto Rico because he didn't want to pay any capital gains tax. And like, it's super funny. And, you know, we had this conversation about how if you're an export service in Puerto Rico, you pay like 3% income tax. Like, what? And I never knew that. And so I love finding out all these like really nuanced things about, you know, saving taxes, putting together a holistic financial plan. And so I'm obsessed with it, and I could do it until I die. And I think it's my life's work. So yeah, that's my superpower. It's just like a unhealthy or healthy obsession about getting all the right answers.
I would agree with you. I think I have the same obsession, you know, and mine is a little more focused towards alternative investment vehicles, but, you know, very, very similar to what you're talking about. I totally get it. Okay. We have heard a lot of reasons why you're awesome and things you've done in the past that are really cool, but give me some dirt, brother. What's your biggest failure to date, and what did you learn from it?
I would say my biggest failure to date was the scarcity mindset that I've had for the majority of my life. You know, my family lost everything in 2008. And after that, the conversations around money, around, and it even pops up now, like, I'm not totally out of it, right? I have to constantly remind myself, but around having a house, you know, big house, and, you know, just daily purchases, I was just the worst. You know, I have this story, and I've told it about a million times, Chad, but my now fiance, my girlfriend and I were long distance, and she flew from Denver to Pittsburgh. And when she flew to Pittsburgh, it was her birthday. And I love celebrating birthdays. So I'm like, let's throw an enormous party now, celebrate life, right? That's
Absolutely
the greatest thing we could possibly celebrate, the birth of my fiance, the love of my life. But she came, and I guess I didn't feel it that way. Now, we went to happy hour at a not great restaurant, right? I didn't order an entree or any alcohol. This is like the second year of our relationship, and we were still like, are we together? You know, in that stage. And I got her a shoebox that wasn't wrapped, and in the shoebox was like a stained panty. And I'm like, I'm gonna get you underwear for your birthday. I tell people that story, and they're like, what? You guys are still together? Yes.
I was gonna say, how did she react? I'm waiting for the, you know, and then
well, you know, I think that we were still in like an extended honeymoon phase. And so she was like, I think she was so shocked. She said, is this really happening? But she loved me. And I think she saw past it. She saw the best in me. And today I exhibit a much more abundant mindset. But man, Chad, when I look back at that and I cringe, but I have to tell people about it, because I say, listen, this is where you can go from abundant. Your mindset is one of the most critical things to get you to where you need to go.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. So I believe you have a free gift for our listeners in the form of a webinar. Where can that be found?
Yep. So you can go to my website, Creative-Capitalist, and you can jump on at the bottom of the page. There's a free webinar there for Chad's listeners. And yeah, it'll be something really worth your time, I believe.
Fantastic, folks. And one of Quattro's 4 pillars is philanthropy, Clay. So I love to come on and offer our guests to mention any philanthropic venture that you're in or supporting that our listeners might support on your behalf. So what would that be?
Yep. So there are a couple of philanthropic ventures. One of them is around supporting grassroots, sustainable climate tech. You know, people starting in startups trying to fight climate change. That's something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and Kara and my fiance and I donate some percentage of our income every year to that.
Very good. Thank you for that. All right. Well, Clay, this has been a hugely informative episode. I really look forward to seeing what you, your team, and Creative Capitalist, develop over the coming years. I think this is going to be a company to watch, folks. So without further ado, I think this has been a conclusion to another episode of the Real Estate Runway podcast. Until next time, over and out.
We hope this episode was insightful and brought value to your day. If so, please be awesome and leave us a 5-star review. Find out how Team Quattro can help you at thequattroway.com. Until next time, this is the Real Estate Runway podcast.